joining in. We'll give them another 5 minutes to see who is rolling in. How
I
are things
think
in your world?
Subbu is someone you know, Arjun.
That's right. Subbu is
I'm in product. It's at Cisco, but me and Arjun go back to college days.
Okay. Cool. There's someone from Inflection, actually.
Oh, Hendra. Welcome,
Hey.
Hendra.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah.
Okay. Welcome to the Fully Remote Talk Show. I think this is great to have new people over here.
Andra, by the way, for the ship it, we'll actually be trying out using Zinc and seeing how that goes.
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, looks like it's really nice to see everyone here and then presented. So.
Yeah. Henry, we're gonna start the show shortly. Andrew's here. Hey, Andrew.
Arjun, what's up?
What's up, Andrew? How are you doing?
Not too bad.
Awesome. Welcome to the Fully Remote Talk Show. Andrew, folks, has been the person who actually kickstarted this process of running the Fully Remote Talk Show for us, and he's now slowly letting the handle slowly loose and letting me drive the car, and I'm sort of taking it for a spin at this point of time.
Happy to be here.
Yeah.
Siddharth, Subbu, good to see you. Oh my gosh.
Welcome, hey. Ash.
Hello.
I know that guy. I'm out of here.
Friendly crowd here. Yeah, we'll be starting in just a couple more minutes, just waiting for a couple more people to come in over here, and then we can get started. While we're waiting here, anyone has any other thoughts on topics that are of interest that we should be talking about in the Fully Remote Talk Show?
I want to talk about onboarding because I think it's it's kind of wrapped up in hiring, and I think we talked a little bit about this show before, but this idea that most organizations don't really want to slow down to speed up, but to invest in a good onboarding probably makes for a much better life cycle for that employee. Probably longer. They're probably getting up to speed quicker. You're going to have fewer of those situations where someone bounces after 90 days or something. They're just gone, which has happened to me. So I'll love to hear from the group on that one.
Makes
I'd love to talk about time zones. That would be helpful.
That is going to be a topic for today as well. We're going to literally talk about hey, how does that work when you have a global team and the different time zones and all the craziness that comes with that. Siddharth's here, and he will be telling us on how he is making that happen. So that's awesome. And onboarding is pretty interesting. Siddharth and I was just catching up before they all showed up, and he was talking about how they're thinking about onboarding from the ground up. And maybe not today, but we might bring back Siddharth on talking about onboarding and hiring as well. He seems like he has some good tips on hiring as well, so that's great.
Awesome.
Yeah, brainstorming and having these workshops. I guess, how do you do it when you're fully remote in a very effective way? That's another. I mean, you're very used to doing it in front of a whiteboard with stickies and so on, and the output gets a fully remote team understanding how effective it is and how you can effectively do it is.
Yeah, high collaborative exercises. Absolutely, I think it's it actually reminds me, I know somebody at Mural who I can actually invite to like talk about that as well. Mural, Miro are all players who are like thinking about the space. And of course, we are, yeah. Hey, nice to meet you.
Hello.
Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show.
Hello.
All right. I think we are 5 minutes past the time over here. So I'm just going to go get started. Nice meeting all of you. This is a tradition that Andrew started, and I'm going to continue on. Like, let's take a moment to say where we are coming in from today. Just enter the name of your city in that box that you see over here. And then once everybody gets an opportunity to finish that, we can literally see like a picture of where everybody today is joining us from. Give it another 10 seconds for people who are still figuring out where the keyboards are. And 5, 4, 3, and there we go. Wow, Seattle, San Ramon, Menlo Park, California, Raleigh, Mountain View, Bellevue. Okay, Denver. Okay, a little like wider across the country, but it's largely US. Like the last couple of weeks, we've had some folks from across the world, and like this is a US-centric meeting here today. Excited, welcome everybody again. Today we have this topic in our episode 4 of how to build meeting culture for global teams. Again, meetings are some things that we are not unfamiliar with. Most of us have a love-hate relationship with it. In that sense, we kind of love to hate it most of the times. But I think now in the remote world, it's kind of changed how we think about meetings. Now this has become like the only opportunity that you're seeing the humans behind these meetings and building these trust, building these bonding is all happening over here. But now take this whole global teams with people across time zones, and how is this going to work out? How are you going to even connect across not just people with different time zones, but different real cultures? And how are you going to build a meeting culture? And that's literally what we're going to talk today. And we have an expert for this. And let me introduce you. A warm welcome to Siddharth. Siddharth is engineer by training. He's a veteran in the tech field over here. His career has spanned very many different companies, from Qualcomm to Intuit to now recently at Inflection. And he's also worn several different hats, from being an engineer, architect, and CTO. And as a recent after now, he's been in the advisory board of several companies as well. So with that, like, very, very warm welcome, Siddharth. Siddharth writes on Medium, and there is a link to that on the right, and along with his LinkedIn, in case if you want to know more about him. Siddharth, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Arjun. Excited to be here.
Awesome. So I want to like jump in right and just go into the interview mode over here, where I want to ask you a few questions to get started. But folks, if you do have any questions, feel free to hit that raise hand button as it says there, and then we can bring you up on stage and let you do the question asking, and I can be part of the listening crowd as well. So Siddharth, like, what is the, tell us briefly about, like, it's like your company, the employees, and the distribution of this across the globe to set context over here.
Yeah, so Inflection is a company which is hypothetically based in Redwood Shores, California. And I say hypothetically because you can send us snail mail, but it'll go to a PO box and someone will pick that up. Right? So we no longer have a physical office. Well, we do have one office, but no one is in there in Omaha, Nebraska. But we have given up the leases in every single place. And we are a truly global company. We span actually 3 continents: North America, Europe, Eastern Europe in particular, and South America. So we have got engineers in all these 3 locations, and we are actually working really nicely and well across 3 continents now. So, and in fact, our primary growth is coming outside the US now. We are hiring. We are obviously continuing to hire in the US where we can, but opportunistically. But really, the center of gravity of employees now has shifted to outside the US. Yeah,
that's awesome. Okay, so a truly global workforce for you. And I think when talking about meeting culture, right? Like, at what point of time did you realize that, okay, you need to put some systems in place? Did that happen organically, or like one story or incident that sort of triggered this whole thinking for you?
Yeah, look, so let me start out by basically the war for talent that all of us are actually confronting, right? I mean, it's really hard to find great talent anywhere. So, and when I joined Inflection, so we started looking at this, and one of the things was we are in the Bay Area and we are competing with all the heavyweights in the Bay Area, and that's actually difficult when you're competing with the Googles and the Facebooks and so on, right? So my take to the CEO was, I think we need to do a little switcheroo. Rather than hiring where we have offices, we need to go to where the talent is, and that's the leg up that we get. So that was a pretty interesting discussion at the C staff at Inflection. And finally we agreed that we are going to try that out. So we basically, just as the pandemic was unrolling, we had kind of made the decision that we are going to go to where the talent is. And so we kind of opened up and said, where are good engineers? And we put remote in every single job description that we had. And we are kind of really pleasantly surprised that suddenly our uptake was significantly higher, in that a lot of the other companies hadn't quite gotten to a point where they were actually open to this idea of remote. And we started hiring employees all over the US first. So we have employees right now, I think, in 40 of the 50 states in the US. So that was basically where we started. And then getting to the question you're asking, Arjun, we started, as we started expanding in Europe, we started expanding in Brazil. It was like, okay, what are we doing here for, as far as, meeting hours and so on are concerned, because, the time zones are really crazy. One, stupid snide remark I made was, what if we say that we cancel our time zones and it's 9 a.m. everywhere? It doesn't matter whether it's the middle of the night or not, it's 9 a.m. for you. Obviously, that's not something that's going to fly. But we actually set up, put a couple of principles. I like to work backwards, start at principles and then work from there. And so we put a couple of principles in place. And the first principle was asynchronous time is actually important. And in fact, we should prioritize asynchronous time over synchronous time. But at the same time, synchronous time is also important. You can't ignore synchronous time altogether. Because, how do you establish a culture when we are, people actually honestly haven't ever met each other, even within a locale. So we've got a bunch of engineers in Brazil, and Brazil is a huge country. They live in different cities. They've actually not met each other. So how do you establish certain, cultural artifacts that are important to us? Like most companies, we also have a set of values that we really treasure. Some of the values just come around because of the actions we have, but some of it you got to work on it in order to establish the value. And very often it's these group meetings that you have where you kind of see how people are expected to work together, to kind of set the precedent for what is important. So, there are certain things which we said are synchronous meetings are good for, stand-ups and scrum meetings and things like we do quarterly planning. Those are times when people are committing to finishing something. So, you kind of want to look at everyone and see everyone nod, agree or disagree with what is being proposed. And in general, increasing our shared consciousness and this notion of culture, that's what we used synchronous meetings for. But anything that doesn't fall in this bucket, I encourage people, you got to question whether you really need this or not. Like the traditional, it's Tuesday morning, 10 o'clock, and therefore we are going to have a staff meeting. Do we really need that staff meeting? So I encourage people to actually question that. And, we have actually gotten rid of a few meetings as a result of that. The last thing I would say is, this whole notion of synchronous meetings is one of the things that's important is actually getting together to do nothing but have fun. Right, so we try to figure out how do we make that happen. Now, this is actually difficult to do that globally. So we encourage teams to do it locally. So, for example, Thursdays at 4 o'clock, once a month, we have this North American-based happy hour, and we basically play board games together. Right, so and you get your favorite drink, and you don't talk about work at all, just have some fun. That's another thing that we do. The last thing before I come up for air again is I'd say that one of the things we've established is it doesn't matter where in the world you are, but 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time is working hours for everyone. That is, those are the collaboration hours. And beyond those hours, there are no there is no regulation on what you're supposed to be doing, right? There is one engineer who has a couple of dogs and likes to go out for long walks during the middle of the day. Hey, that's on you. As long as it doesn't interfere with the 10 a.m., 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. time slot we have for synchronous meetings, you can structure your day any which way you want. And what we really care about is the outcome, not showing your face on meetings, right?
This is awesome. I think that was power packed. I think a lot of points that resonated. I want to double click on that 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. thing that you brought, because that seems like that is the key to how you're getting synchronous and the gap between synchronous and asynchronous. But before we get to that, I want to just generally quiz folks over here, right? In terms of you talked about synchronous and asynchronous. I want to bring this up and ask everybody over here as there are some meetings that make sense when they are more synchronous, and then there are some that are better done asynchronous. And honestly, what is everybody's feel over here? And I'm asking this because there might be huge collisions over here, or there might be huge disparities, and I want to get a sense of what other people think. What are some types of meetings that we think are better done synchronously? And if you have those, please, these are type of meetings. So one-on-ones, should that be synchronous, asynchronous? Type them all. I'll probably wait for another minute or so as you people are typing. Give another 30 seconds as people think about the different types of meetings we attend and feel oh, that meeting could have been an email. So what are some things that couldn't have been an email and should actually be better off in either over video conferencing or in person? What are some of those events? Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's see how things have come up over here. All right, that's a lot of different one-on-ones. Seems like it's sort of anchored in the center. It feels like one of those things that people want to see face to face. So let me actually take a moment to look at this and Siddharth, why don't you react to this? What is your thoughts on this? Well, when you see this, how do you feel about this, and what do you think about this?
I agree on one-on-ones for sure. And that's probably one of the things that stands out. The brainstorming thing, let me share a perspective with you. I think you need to be honestly a little bit careful with how brainstorming is structured. Because what I've observed is whether it's in person or whether it's virtually over a Miro board or something, sometimes brainstorming tends to devolve into group thinking. That is, one person's perspective comes up and suddenly everyone's thinking the same way. So I actually think you need to be cautious. If we are doing brainstorming, what I like to do is say, here's the topic, here's what we are going to be doing. Everyone needs to go off and write their own notes, actually not on a Miro board, on a piece of paper or whatever, and then upload it, and then we can have a discussion about it, because otherwise we succumb to group thinking, particularly if there's an exec in the room and everyone kind of starts imitating what they're saying. So I would say that's one thing that needs to, we need to be cautious about that. I agree with Scrum stand-ups. They're short. They need to be kept short, and they need to be effective. And that's what we do at Inflection. Planning and commitments, which is at Inflection we do quarterly planning. I think that's really important that everyone, you see everyone acknowledging and agreeing to the plans, or you see people disagreeing with the plans, both of which are important. There are visual cues which are important to get from that. So I'd agree with that. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. That's good. Yeah. I mean, I think the brainstorming group thinking is a very, very interesting point that you make. Literally, when we were designing this word cloud, is one thing that we thought about is wouldn't it be awesome when as people are typing for it to all start showing up, and we then made a conscious choice to say that you know what, that's going to be really hard for somebody who doesn't want to get biased by what other people type. Like if
Yeah,
everybody's
good point.
typing one-on-ones and you don't think that's true, then you wouldn't be typing that. And so it's the conscious choice for us to do that. I had a question to follow, but like Andrew wants to come up on stage over here and ask a question. Andrew, what's your question?
Hi, Siddharth. I had my reaction was almost the opposite, which is like, hey, there's a lot coming out on this word cloud. Yeah, obviously one-on-ones I think were a trend in there, but it seemed to me like everybody had sort of like every sort of meeting was sort of in there. I almost feel like that question would have been interesting to ask as, hey, what should not be? What kind of meetings are there should not be synchronous? But I don't know, just that kind of just widespread of things kind of surprised me, and I'm wondering if, I don't know, if maybe there was a twinge of that in your mind as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. So for me, the forcing function is the shared working hours, right? 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Pacific.
Yeah.
So there are 2 hours there. So, you got to guard those hours very, very carefully. So, and I think people generally do a good job of that. I will confess. So, we at Inflection, we don't always stick to that 8 to 10. And sometimes, you find, for example, engineers in Ukraine staying up beyond 8 p.m. their time in order to finish other things, mostly if you're a manager. But the truncated time directions that we give actually encourages people to get away from having meeting outside those hours. So the first thing I would say, Andrew, is that's a good forcing function to exhibit. The second thing that we don't necessarily do particularly well, but I encourage people to say, look, you wanted this meeting, but actually I think this can be done asynchronously. So I kind of role model that behavior, but that doesn't necessarily mean that everyone really, feels comfortable doing that. Part of, honestly, our problem is, Inflection's culture is a culture of kindness and niceness, which is fantastic. But sometimes that translates into, I'm being mean by saying that I don't have time for you right now. So, you kind of need to put guardrails around that. And I encourage people to be kind with a little bit of an edge to your kindness, right? Because kindness doesn't always mean saying yes to things. Kindness also implies saying no to things. So, yeah. I know this was a meandering answer, Andrew, but that's kind of how we approach it.
Well, it goes from organization to organization too, which is, just varies so much.
The link that Arjun shared has a link to a blog that I read a very interesting blog post from Levels, which is linked in my blog. So you should have a look at that. They've got some interesting takes on how basically the CEO says, yeah, I have got limited synchronous hours. You should send me an email or send me a video using Loom, which seems to be the other thing that people are increasingly doing. And he basically makes it a point to say no if he thinks it's not a good use of his time.
This is great. I think like we are quickly running out of time here, and I want to jump to Q&A. But before that, I want to take this moment to just capture this exact process that you're talking about. You mentioned this 8 to 10 a.m. a couple of times over here right now. What is the process? It's what have you put in your employee handbook of sorts that actually makes this happen? How do you hire for it? Just give me that quick 2 minutes.
So in fact, the blog link, the Medium link that Arjun shared, is actually a copy of what is in our policies on our Confluence page. I basically just copied it right over. This is exactly what it says, right? So for example, it says all employees irrespective of location share common work hours between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. And it very specifically says cross-site collaboration outside those hours is discouraged. Right, so you could have meetings locally, and to the extent possible, we try to ensure that local teams have kind of ownership of a decomposed chunk of functionality, so that there isn't too much coupling to other sites. And we actually say that across these hours, do not have cross-site meetings. We actually discourage that. That's your time to either collaborate locally or work on your own. So that is what is in our company policy.
Awesome. Okay, this is great. I think I want to open it up. I want to wrap it up in 5 to 10 minutes right now, and I want to open it up for Q&A for other people. but before that, like, maybe before Q&A, I just want to bring like a couple of people up on stage and like see if anybody had like a real quick, I mean, this needs to be like super quick, 30 seconds. What is one sort of virtual meeting tip that has worked great for you? If you do have a tip that you have made it work, please like raise your hand, just come up and like share that with us. I sense always that like these kind of shows, when we bring in people's ideas, it's way much like the guest also gets to take away something right after this meeting. So what is a tip that you would like talk? Andrew again. Come on, Andrew. Quick tip.
Awesome. Yeah. So two things. One is give people like specific roles in a meeting. Like, hey, you are going to talk about this. You talk about this other thing. You are going to wrap this up and summarize it. And then you're going to tell the group like what are the next steps, and you're going to send that out to everybody. And then number two is have more junior level people have a chance to run meetings, because I think there's just working in large organizations, my experience has always been they never get good at it because they're never given a chance. And this helps them network with people. And if a senior level person recognizes a junior level person put time and care and attention into running a good meeting, then that person can be seen, and that's just never ever happens otherwise.
Awesome. Anybody else? That was great. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks for just jumping in, being the first to ask as well. Anyone else? Not spending too much time waiting on this, so we're gonna jump to the Q&A. Oh, there you go. Jay has an idea. Come on.
Yeah, so like the idea is to basically always come in with an agenda, right? Like sometimes it's easy to ad lib on real meetings, but like the idea is to come in with an agenda. But then like if you really want to have some free space for people to talk, add that as part of the agenda. So say that, okay, I want to have 5 minutes to actually like for us to unwind or just talk about like ideas that you can, but have that be qualified as an agenda, as opposed to sort of drawing blanks. Or if you realize the meeting's agenda is done, end the meeting because you're done, right? You're saving people's time. So I would say that's my little tidbit.
That is perfect. Any last minute? Anyone else coming up? Okay, Siddharth has another one. Hey,
I'll just quickly say that I'm a huge fan of the Amazon style 6 pages and actually pre-reading content before coming to the meeting. I don't think we always practice that, but I think whenever we do, meetings are dramatically more effective.
Great. Awesome. Super cool. I think I'm going to jump to Q&A and see if anybody has any other burning questions for Siddharth, or if it might be a comment. Feel free to raise your hand again over there on the right box over there, and like I can like bring you up on stage. If you have a question that is just too uncomfortable for Siddharth to answer and you want to ask that anonymously, then you should. And make sure you mark that Ask Anonymously button. There you go. Vivek has something to come up on stage. Vivek. Hey, Vivek, you're muted, Vivek. Oh, Vivek, we can't hear you. You're muted. Looks like some technical challenges there. Vivek, in case if you are on a mobile device, this might be not the best experience for you. Yeah. Any other question? I had a couple of questions that I collected over LinkedIn conversations with other people on this topic that I can actually like kickstart this with. But if anybody else has a question, feel free to write this over here. I think in this, one of the things that you talked about is like being flexible for employees, right? So that like one question that I had is like, how much of that is starting to come up and becoming normal is the demand for flexibility among employees, both time, hours, number of hours worked, and like everything else. And is this a superpower with regards to like hiring that you offer it, or is this becoming the norm very soon?
I think it's increasingly becoming the norm. I mean, particularly in high-tech jobs that we are in. I mean, you tell people that, oh, you need to work the following hours, it's like, I don't think it'll work any longer. So, I think it was a little bit, even prior to the pandemic when we offered that, it was actually interesting. So prior to the pandemic, we said, hey, you need to be the following days are work from home days, and everyone used to look forward to the work from home days. Well, work from home has become the norm, and for a company like ours, work from home is what we are doing, right? And so there is an expectation that you have to manage your own time. But concomitantly with that, what we have is we actually track a lot of productivity metrics. And these are not secret metrics that I look at for the team. The entire team actually gets to see the same metrics that I do, with an idea that we are going to identify what the hotspots are where people are not able to do a good job. And so I think that's the flip side of the flexibility that you have. We still have customer deliverables that we have to deliver to, and we have to make sure we are doing a good job. And just at Inflection, I'd say, we have moved from delivering software every 2 weeks to, increasingly, we used serverless for all our new development. So we literally deploy thousands of times every month. So that's what we have come to. And, so it's easy to see that not only has that stuck, it's actually increased our productivity.
Awesome. Super helpful. Subbu has a question over here, which is kind of displayed over here. I'll read it out. About canceling leases for certain sites. Does hybrid and fully remote cause friction? Is the question.
Yeah. So first of all, the only site we haven't canceled leases for is our customer support operations. Right? We have a customer support team, about 100 people, and for them, working from home might not be an option. Some of them don't have very good internet connection, so we maintain facilities, but no one else has that. I do think it's better to be fully remote rather than hybrid, because the experience, which I think many of us have probably had, is there are a bunch of people in a room, and then there are a bunch of people who are remote, and the communication is actually imbalanced. I think there is more the level of consciousness and shared consciousness in the room tends to be much more than what is outside. So I generally think working remotely has been a really nice equalizer. So in my opinion, fully remote is superior to having hybrid. Now there are other companies which do other things, like you can choose to go into work anytime you want. I think that's great. But for us, not having offices has actually been worked pretty well for it. And we continuously ask employees, is this something you want to continue doing? And consistently about 80 to 85% of our employees say, no, I like working from home. This works for me. And for those who don't, we actually offer them spaces at one of these, plug and play centers that you can go rent an office and work from there. And every now and then we actually go and have meetings at these places as well.
This is super awesome. Thank you so much for the time, Siddharth. This has been amazing to have you over here. I want to leave this to be the stage where we are all in. While I am thanking you, in case if you folks have any thoughts of top takeaways from today, feel free to share that over here on the side. You have a text box that you can type these takeaways in. And there is a Google Forms link where you can share your feedback. Feel free to click on that. I have no idea where that goes yet because Andrew set that up and I have to ask him where it is. But we would love to read everything there and improve the talk show as well as any topics that we would want to talk about. Siddharth, thank you so much again for joining and giving us your insights into the meeting culture for global teams. Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Arjun. It's been a blast. I really appreciate everyone's time.
All right, folks. Feel free to hang in over here. I'm gonna hang in over here and talk. But otherwise, we will see you next week at 4:30 p.m. for our next cool topic, which I'm still figuring out. So yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you, Arjun.
All right.
Nice meeting everyone.
Thank you, Siddharth. Good to see you.
Thanks, folks.